Okay, hello. Thanks everyone for joining this next episode in the Clinical Innovation Awards. And today I am delighted to be speaking to Dr. Alison Liddy, the CEO and founder of Relevium Bio. Alison, thank you so much for joining me.
Not at all, Stephen. I'm more than happy to join you today.
Great, good stuff. I suppose just before we jump off, I might ask you to introduce yourself and give us, I suppose your story in your own words, and then we'll dive into it a bit more. So, whenever you're ready.
Yeah. So I probably finished my PhD. I know a long time ago now at this stage, from the University of Birmingham in biochemical engineering, and at that stage, couldn't wait to get out of academia, and I jumped into working for multinationals such as Roche, Boston Scientific, and then Cook Medical. And it was when I was on a project in Cook, it was a blank page project, really. I started to think maybe this is something I could do for myself. I could kind of see how a whole project was brought together and how it was definitely a big challenge, but it was something I thought I could do for myself. And it was at that point in time I started looking at the BioInnovate Fellowship. And it was about a year after that I went back in, did the BioInnovate Fellowship in NUI Galway, and then went into, I suppose, NUI Galway was funded through NUI Galway on different funds. One key part was winning the FFI Innovation Prize. That was 1.2 million. We did that with multiple PIs that we're working with internally, so it was a very collaborative award and effort. And I suppose here we are now, we've spun out on the Y Combinator investment and also on an EIC transition grant as well, and we're actively fundraising at the moment for our seed round.
I mean, that's a really brief synopsis of the amount of work you've actually done. Yeah. So I mean, just for people who may not be too familiar with it, the BioInnovate Programme itself is it's run in NUI Galway. We've probably mentioned it on previous episodes of this, but basically you go in to the program for 10 months and you're immersed in a clinical environment where you follow around doctors or clinicians and nurses, the whole teams, and you kind of understand the way it works and what problems there are. You identify an area where you think a solution is needed, and that's kind of where your idea came from. Then you found an idea or an area. Is that?
Yeah, it is. Well, it started there where I identified there was a need for chronic pain, new treatments in chronic pain. But it was about 2 years after that I moved into the area of osteoarthritis. And then started to develop a gel treatment for osteoarthritis pain, where there's specific need for new treatments in that space. But definitely the origins began in BioInnovate. Definitely BioInnovate gives you the skill set and the thinking to screen a need will be the big thing, to really validate, is this a real problem? Is it a local problem? Is it a problem that stakeholders are interested in getting solved? And there's a whole process there that comes from the Stanford Biodesign Program, which is affiliated with BioInnovate, and it's really applying that process from the point where you identify an unmet clinical need, you validate that need, and then you start going into solution mode around the need. But then there's a whole other part to that as well, with regard to, will somebody pay for your solution? Is there an economic, value in it? Which obviously, even if you've got a great problem and a great solution, if somebody's not going to pay for it, that can be a problem as well.
I mean, that's a perfect illustration of the story. Everybody comes in, they've identified those needs and they know they're a problem, but to prove it, to validate it, to find out who's going to pay for it. And I mean, as you said, that's the process. You learn those tools. You went from learning that out into 2 years, you said, before you moved into the osteoarthritis space, and here you are now. And you mentioned Y Combinator and EIC. You just dropped them in there flippantly, but these are huge investments and programs for startup companies. So you kind of went from finding the need, developing a solution, but the right solution, or something that people are willing to to invest in, to see come to market or see the light of day. And now you have a significant amount of, I suppose, momentum.
Yeah, no, we have. And I think, like, particularly for me, I think collaborating with PIs internally as well, we have really good goodwill from a lot of people at the start on the project, and that made a massive difference to us. And basically, it's bringing in that first fund. You get your first funding in, you can do some development work, generate test data, apply for another fund, and build momentum from there. And whether that's an Enterprise Ireland commercialization fund, or as we were talking about earlier today, an EI feasibility fund, is a great starting point as well to basically, screen a need that you think is a need and see if you can build a commercial product around that need as well.
Yeah, no, that's it is brilliant. I won't dwell too much on where you are now, and I just want to go a little bit. You mentioned PIs, and for those who are unfamiliar with that, they're people working in academia. They're what they're called principal investigators, but these are the ones who run labs. They might be experts in their particular area, and in your case, you had certain areas where you needed expertise that were outside your own kind of wheelhouse. Would you speak a little bit about those kind of supports in the university, how they helped you move along?
Yeah, no, they were a massive support to us. So, I mean, when I was in the university, I had no lab. I had an idea and I had some funding. And so the PIs we work with, gave us resources. They gave us access to their labs, or they did some of the work for the group. And that made a massive difference. And, the one thing I'd say to anyone starting out, particularly somebody who's interested in doing a project like this and might not have the resources, is it's well worth going to identify people, knock on their door, have an open conversation about what you're thinking, the problem you'd like to solve. And, most people are always interested in collaborating on interesting projects. And there is a Stephen, there is a massive support system within the university, and so many highly skilled people there that can help, across such a wide variety of subject areas as well.
And from we have a couple of videos with a few people working in academia and how you'd approach them, like Dr. Ona Carroll up in UCD, Emer Dolan here in Galway, and a couple of others. The other side of the house then, I suppose, is around the commercialization and, say, the IP management. And we spoke with Fionnuala Brown from the Tech Transfer Office as well. How did you find those kind of supports? Were they of benefit to you in your journey?
Yeah, the TTO at NUI Galway have just been amazing. And so they supported us right through with regard to, filing our IP, supporting the IP, but also when we were licensing the IP into the company as well. I think, there's been so many people that have come before us as well. The experience is there, the knowledge is there of, the requirements, and also they're very aware of timelines as well. So, from my experience working with the TTO, it was a really, really positive experience. And, again, a great group to talk to. First stage is file your invention disclosure form. And then, as the project progresses, if there is something novel and inventive, get a patent filed on that as well. And they will absolutely support anybody internally, I would think, to do that.
100%, and we've worked with them through the Health Innovation Hub as well, and not just NUI Galway, but other academic institutions, and they're all the same really. They're there to support those people coming in with ideas that have intellectual property that can be patented, that is commercializable, and they have the in-house expertise, but they also go out externally as well and support the costs around that. And you said you mentioned it there, then licensing it back to you, and they protect it until they hand it over to you. Well, I mean, it's licensed back to you, and that's a huge advantage for any company starting out, that you're not carrying that risk until you're ready to support it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. And I suppose that is the model, that the IP is filed internally, and then if somebody has the funding and the financial capacity to support the licensing of that option is definitely there, and you can approach the TTO and discuss that process and the terms of that licensing agreement. And as I said already, they have a huge amount of experience at this stage, a lot of success stories coming out of NUI Galway, and I mean, they make it very easy.
Well, you're one of those success stories, yourself and the team there. So that's you know, it is I suppose living proof. I just want to ask you as well. You know, this is there's a lot of work in this, bringing you know, your idea from, you know, validating the need in the first instance, and then going through your kind of solution generation process to where you are now. How important was team, and not just the, well, I suppose I always look at it as two sides. There's the team on the ground, and then there's a team of advisors and helpers that aren't necessarily day to day. Would you speak a little bit about those?
Yeah, so we have kind of two, I suppose, group of advisors currently. We have a clinical group and a commercial group. The clinical group are based across the global. So we have KOLs in Ireland, you know, some top KOLs in the UK. And then we have two big KOLs, one working out of Stanford, and also one from the University Hospital Group in the US. They have been crucial because they build credibility to what you're trying to do. They put their name to it as well, which is very important from an investment point of view. But also they help with, you know, your clinical strategy, the problems they've seen, particularly our KOL in Stanford that has run multiple clinical trials in pain. He's seen what can go wrong. You know, he's already advising us, and at this stage, we've been working with him for nearly three years. We see him as a friend. You know, he takes calls from us any time. He's just a really good guy. And I'd say to anyone starting out with your advisors, you know, the first phase, you know, obviously you meet them, and you know, to build that relationship is really, really important, and make sure, because it is a long road here. You know, there are people you can get on very well with as well. And then our commercial advisors will be people who come from industry previously. We have one very good commercial advisor that's since taken a role in the company, Damien Kelly. And Damien's come in as our CFO. Damien is former managing director of BioInnovate in Spittle. They were acquired by Mylan for 615 million. And then Damien moved over to the States and was global CFO for Mylan. So he's huge experience in the pharma industry, and he is really adding, you know, already he's only come into the office the last month, and we can see the difference already because his experience is really coming to the fore. And then we also hired people that we knew in NUI Galway, that we worked with closely for the last few years. They were researchers internally. They wanted to come out into industry. They were really excellent to work with. We've known them very well. We know their work is top notch, and they've also taken a role in the company as well. So most people that are working with us at the moment are people we've known a long time.
It's a very organic way of doing it. You know, you kind of, you meet them early on in the process. You work together, you get to know each other, and you move all in the same direction with the same vision. And then, you know, here you are now.
Yeah.
You're spun out, you're set up, and you know, you're all marching in the one way. Like, it's great. When you're speaking about the key opinion leaders, the KOLs, like, you have a very strong advisory board there from, as you said, you know, international group. How difficult was it to engage with those people in the first instance? Were they friendly? Were they open? Or was it?
Yeah, some are friendly, you know, everyone is different, but it can sometimes just be personalities as well, that you connect with one person and you won't connect. Two of the KOLs in the US, we have had relationships with them a long time. You know, they're pain specialists. We connected with them quite early in the project, and I suppose you just get to know people more over time. You have a lot of discussions with them, you know, particularly in the US, you're up for dialing in late at night. They're finishing clinic at 5 or 6 there. It could be 12 o'clock our time here. So, you know, they appreciated that as well. We could often be on late night calls with them. But I suppose it's like anything in life, see, these things take time. It is still a relationship building process. It's open. One thing I'd say to people is be open and transparent as well. You know, ask people what they want. You are obviously taking people's time. You know, we're very fortunate that these two people didn't want anything. They just wanted to, you know, they're very interested in innovation and new tech. Some people do want to be paid. That's okay too, you know, so it's, but it's keeping the conversation and the communication open from day one. So I suppose you manage expectations that people don't get upset, and then there can be, you know, the relationship doesn't work out because nobody wants that either.
Well, I think you're like, it's a really good point. I'd see it a lot myself. It is about that kind of transparency that, you know, you're coming to the table with your cards face up, so people know exactly what they're getting into, and it's their decision then to align with you or not. And, you know, at least you all know where you stand. And it sounds like it's a strategy that's worked very well for you guys, so, which is fantastic.
Just one thing there as well, Steve, is one thing we found that works well is keeping the number small on our clinical advisory board. So we had gone out wider, you know, which seemed good, but to manage those relationships and the time involved, you know, it's time consuming. So we just made a decision that recently we're better off to have a few advisors that we have a very good relationship with than to have a lot of advisors that you don't have that same relationship with, you know. So because obviously time is, you know, really tight when you have a startup, and, you know, months can go by very quickly and you haven't updated somebody on the project or communicated with them, and, you know, then the relationship can be, you know, it can be hard to get in contact with them again.
Yeah, no, very, very good point. I suppose in terms of entrepreneurship, clinical entrepreneurship, there will be people hopefully applying for the Clinical Innovation Award. They'll be looking at this. They see, okay, I'm only here with an idea now. How do I get to where, say, you are, Alison? What kind of, I suppose, there's two parts to this question. One is, what kind of qualities in a person really work as in this space in entrepreneurship, or what should they work on? Do you comment on that?
I can repeat something I heard recently, which I thought was very good, and it came from the Y Combinator. So the Y Combinator have invested in over 3,000 companies, and they have some very smart people working for them. And they said they took all the data from all the companies. They're trying to analyze trends of what could make a company a better investment, and they analyzed everything, you know, age, education, experience, background. They said they analyzed everything they could possibly find, and they couldn't find any common denominator. So they had companies that succeeded that they never thought would succeed, and entrepreneurs they had written off that did succeed, and then some they thought really would that didn't. But they did determine one thing. So they have picked up one thing that they had marked for all these groups that they said was a common denominator, and it was resilience and determination. So they said the founders that can do the hard grit, ride the waves, stick it out, because it's really tough, got through, you know. So they said the longer you can do that, the higher your chance of success. So I would say, if anyone's thinking of it, like, if you think you've got grit and resilience and determination, go for it.
No, that's brilliant. I didn't know what you were going to say, but I'm glad I've heard that, you know, independently, other people, and I've asked them that question.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It is around that kind of resilience, because I'm sure you found many doors closed to you as you were, you know, progressing, and it's a rethink or an adjustment or a pivot, as they say. And you know, you need to have, I suppose, that resilience or that grit to you know, take it on the chin and find out where the options are and move on.
It's constantly ducking and diving, and, you know, that is the nature of startups, you know, that it's just there's never a day that you could come in and say it's an easy day.
But they're all interesting days, right?
They are. They're all really interesting.
I suppose this is the last question for you now, and thank you so much for your time, Alison. What advice would you give to anybody who's starting off, those people that, you know, have the ideas, that they think they've identified a problem and they may have a solution? What would you say to them?
I would say look for the funding and supports that are there. So BioInnovate, absolutely, you know, it's an amazing fellowship run out of NUI Galway. You know, talk to people like Professor Martin O'Halloran, who's the director, Professor Mark Rossi, who's also a co-director there. There's also Sandra Ganley that was involved in BioInnovate from the beginning. Amazing people. There's also the Ideas Lab for students that's run out of NUI Galway. So if you're a medical student, another amazing program there that's running. And then there's the funding support, you know, from Enterprise Ireland, just the feasibility grant. So I would say do something, you know, there is stuff there, do something, because, you know, you can spend a long time thinking about something, but just go and do something, because from doing something, other things happen, things move on, and it's amazing what can happen in 12 months when you just go and talk to somebody, you know, even one of those people that are involved with the entrepreneur programs that are run out of Galway, either the student programships, or I mentioned BioInnovate, or, you know, the Enterprise Ireland funding support that's there as well.
Like the point you're making there, just do something, you know, give it a go, because if you don't, you'll never know. And you know,
exactly it.
You know, you could turn into the next Relevium Bio, or, you know, you might learn that you learn something. Okay, this one isn't going to work, but now I know what would work up to a point.
That's exactly it. And like, there's no set path. And I mean, I'd always ask somebody who's thinking of doing something, what's the worst that can happen? You take a year out of your career or 2 years out of your career to pursue an idea, you know, or something you're passionate about. What's the worst that can happen? You know, so yeah.
Well, I mean, the absolute worst that could happen is you probably go back to your old job with a brand new set of skills that you can like apply to your past job. And the best that can happen is, who knows, it's quite the sky is the limit should it work out. And a lot of people who we've seen from a clinical perspective, people who go out and step outside their comfort zone, whether they join like the BioInnovate Fellowship Programme or any of the other programs within the HSC or without, that takes them out of their comfort zone. They put a time limit on it, it's a year or whatever it is, or they chase their own idea, their own commercial venture through New Frontiers or whatever, that, you know, it may work, or they'll find something else. It changes your entire perspective on I suppose life and your own career too. And you know, you might leave a company or a job to do one of these things, and you come back into the company or whatever organization, and you're looking at it from a different perspective. You contribute a lot more, and possibly more from, say, a senior level, or at least you have that kind of big picture perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I'm waffling now. Alison, listen, thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to hearing more about your continued success. And it's great to see another Galway startup over there in California flying the flag. Well, I know you're based in Galway, but that's the reference to the Y Combinator. Listen, thank you so much.